This is your boy Trey from the Stone Disclosure. I am back like the tag behind my shirt right now that is ridiculously itching my neck. And I wanted to come on here and just kind of be honest. Myself, I can truly say that it's been a very interesting couple years in my life, and where my life was not that long ago is actually very different from where my life is right now. And I think there is an incredible beauty behind all of that. One thing that I did have to really learn, and I will say I had to learn this in a very quick span of time, only because that's the only way my brain actually functions, is when you're going from such a giant shift in your life, you're very hard on yourself. You're very rough on yourself. You're going through a bunch of things that you don't quite fully understand. And we tend to deal with these things a little bit differently. And one of the things that I would say was a saving grace was something that somebody told me, where they said you have to have grace with yourself. And by extension, you have to have grace with other people. Now, what I mean by that is you have to understand that everybody is going through something. And everybody is a collection of experiences, ideals, traumas, triggers, good times, bad times. They're just a different combination of all of that than you are. So if we look at life that way, we kind of have to understand that we may be looking at them a certain way in situations, and they're looking at us a certain way in situations as well. And you won't always align. It's almost nearly impossible that you and another person on this planet will think the exact same way and function the exact same way if you're being honest with yourself. Twins who grew up in the same household, look the same, same values, same ideas, legitimately around each other all the time, they grow up to have very different opinions at times, and they don't grow up in a space where they think alike for the rest of their lives. So how do you expect two people who weren't raised in the same fire to be forged the same way? Now we have to understand that this idea of not having grace with ourselves is actually normal. It's actually closer to our biology, or at least our mental configuration, than we actually believe it is. If you look at just how human beings function in general, everybody always has that urge to run, that urge to hide. It's normal. If someone's breaking into your house, you may stand your ground, but your first process is, where can I go? How can I hide from this situation? And then if you realize, I can't run, or I can't hide, or, maybe it doesn't make sense for me to do so, you're ready to actually go. To have that fight mentality, it's something that's developed. It's not something that we're born with. We are naturally designed to hide. We are naturally designed to run. It is always our first response to anything. If you guys don't believe me, think about a time when you're stressed. When you're stressed, what do? You find things to de-stress. Everybody has their happy place. Everybody's excited to go home. Everybody's excited to go to a place where you feel safe. Safety is normal. If you're not pursuing safety, you're actually going against your genetic code. And I mean, if you're not pursuing that on a natural basis, because human beings, we are designed and we're put together in a way that we seek shelter, because it's going to give us the best chance for us to actually survive. So if you're a person who you go through problems, your first urge is always going to be to run. It is what it is. Your first urge is going to be, let me avoid this as much as possible. But think about when people do fight. People fight when they need to. They move when it's required. It's very rare that you're going to see a person who's just constantly in the mindset of oh, this happened, let me do something. Oh, this happened, let me figure this out. And I mean truly do this. Not feel like you have to do it because you have to do it. Like truly, this is part of your nature. You don't seek the idea of like, oh, let me be comfortable here, or let me take a break here, or let me. Your whole thing is like, I need to proactively move all the time. If people normally thought like this, everybody would be mad successful at this point in life. It's the truth. It's what separates those brackets. The people that have gotten somewhere in their life, the people that reach a high degree of success, force themselves to move. They force themselves to fight. They're not sitting back in that place of, oh, well, I'm good. Like, we can chill and just relax and stuff like that. So if you're in a place like that, it's not that there's anything wrong with you. You just haven't gotten up the resolve to get to that point yet. You haven't gotten to that point where you're ready to make that shift. And you have to have grace in yourself with that, because it is not easy to do. Again, if everyone could do it, everyone would be in that place right now. That being said, we do have to understand a couple things. So we've already determined that this is not something that is just going to kick in and you're just going to be ready to go on that. This is something you've got to work towards. This is something you've got to make a decision. You got to make the desire for this. And in order to do that, you really have to be honest with yourself. And that's where all of this comes from. You have to come from a place of self-love and honesty. That's a requirement for this. This is not an idea. This is not something where it's like, oh, well, it could help. No, it's a requirement for this. It's a requirement to get to this point. Because if you truly want that, and if you truly want the things that you want and the things that you truly think you desire and you deserve, you have to go out and get it. It's not just going to fall into your lap. We've seen this firsthand. We've seen growing up in our lives, our people in our lives just sit back and just assume things are going to happen in their life, and it doesn't, and they're miserable. That's why there are so many miserable people. So if you're coming to that point where you're going to sit there and be like, yeah, this is what I want, and I love myself. If you love yourself, you got to be honest with yourself. Anybody that you truly love, you will always be honest with. Whether you're going to be bluntly honest or you're going to be like marginally honest, it is what it is, but you've got to be honest with yourself. We have to look at the fact that where we are in our life, our situations, our friendships, our relationships, it's all a reflection of our life. It's all a reflection of the decisions that we've made in our life. And those decisions were made based on our mentality at that time. Who you were last year is not who you are today. Who you were 10 years ago is vastly not the same person that you are now. But your decisions determine if that's a progressive movement or a regressive movement. Life is going to happen regardless. There's nothing you can do to stop that. Life is life. It's just a matter of how you deal with that. And 90% of whether your life is going to be positive or negative is based on the decisions that you make in reaction to the things that are brought to you. So if we're going to constantly sit in this place of like, I want this and I deserve this and these are things that I want in my life, and you're not out there being honest with yourself about it, you're doing yourself a disservice. First and foremost, if you don't do it, ain't nobody going to do it for you. So if it's truly something that you say you want and you're not willing to dedicate your time for it, you're not willing to sacrifice things for it, then you're not going to get it. It just is what it is. Everything in life comes with sacrifice. If we're looking at this in a very basic sense, you got 24 hours in a day. And let's say you dedicate, like myself, 5 to 6 hours of sleep. Your job takes about 8 to 10 hours a day. Travel commutes another 2 hours. If you have kids, then you got to deal with your kids. If you got a second job, you got to go to your second job. You got to take care of your household. You got to have a social life. You're not going to get any more time in the day. You're not. So you now have to determine how you're going to use that residual time that you have. Now, if you're a person who's into fitness, you're going to prioritize your gym time. You're going to say, you know what? I'm going to go And I'm going to take this time that I have here, this 2 hours out of my day that I could be using sitting home and maybe watching Netflix. I'm going to go to the gym and utilize it for that, because that's what you want. That's a goal that you have in mind that you're going to achieve. And in order to do that, you got to go there. So it's easy for you to make that transition to say, I'm going to put my time towards that. Now, if you're that person and you're in the gym all the time and you're not seeing results and you're not doing anything different, you got to look at yourself and say, well, if I'm not seeing the results and I'm the person who's in charge of the effort here, why am I not doing it? What am I doing wrong? And you got to go back and you got to really think about where you're at, why things aren't going the way they're going, what you need to do different, and just kind of constantly just kind of check in with yourself. I do this routinely. I reflect on everything. I reflect on things that I did, things that I said, the ways that I moved, and how I felt about a thing. If I come across a situation or I come across an emotion that I'm feeling or a thought that's coming into my head, the first thing I do is why am I feeling like this? What am I doing? Why is it like this? And whatever answer comes to my head is an honest answer. It is what it is. I got to accept it for what it is. Now, we have to understand that at the end of the day, the one thing that is going to make sure that you kind of progress and move forward in your life and really heal from things and really get the life that you want is you have to determine that that is what you want. And this is what we're here talking about today. Establishing your why is huge. What do I want? Why do I want it? And why don't I have it already? If your goal is, I want to start my own business, well, why do you want it? Oh, I want the financial freedom. I want to be able to be my own boss. I want to be able to have something that I created myself. Something where its success completely falls on me. Something that I can put my name on. So that's why you want it. Now you have to ask yourself, why don't I have that already? What is stopping me from getting that? Why do I not have it in my possession? Maybe you didn't start yet. Maybe you started and it's not going the way you want to go. But sit back and really try to process in an honest sense why you're not there already. And two, you got to look internal first. It's very easy for us to go external and say, oh, well, it's because of this person, or it's because of that, or it's because of this, or I don't have time, or I don't have the resources, or I don't have this. And maybe you don't. Maybe at the time, that stuff's a little bit harder to get. Maybe getting the resources is a little bit harder. Maybe having the money is a little bit difficult for you. But if there's one thing I know about human beings, if we truly want something, we'll figure it out. Because we always have and we always will. This is why we've been able to evolve so well. This is why we've been able to get to a point in our lives where we're at. At some point, what you have right now is something you had to work for. It's something you had to sacrifice for. And I'll give you guys this example. I was told this at a very young age, and it's really stuck with me my entire life. I think I was in the 8th grade when I heard this, and I'm in my 30s now. So this is how long this has sat into my mind. Man said, imagine that you're at a beach. And imagine that there are 10,000 pebbles on this beach. And underneath one of these pebbles is a speck of blue paint. And if you find that pebble by the end of the day, I'll give you $1 million. Now, back then, $1 million was a big deal. Right now, not as much, but it was a big deal. And he's like, how many of you think you would walk out of that day with $1 million? And everybody said, me. Everybody. Everyone's like, oh, me, of course. And he said, why? Why do you think you would walk away with it? Well, I'd find a pebble. So he said, you realize in order to find that pebble, you will have to potentially risk flipping over 10,000 pebbles. Flip them over, look, and put them back. You'd have to remember which pebbles you already went to. You have to create a system to know that you're not overlapping and checking the same one 4, 5, 6, 7 times. You have to understand that your back is going to start hurting because you're constantly bending down. Your neck's going to start hurting. You're going to be fatigued. You're going to be hungry. Anytime you take away from that to use a bathroom, to eat, to get rest, you have to factor all of these things into your life. So taking all of that into consideration, how many of you think you would walk away with that $1,000,000? And some people fell off. Let's say there was 30 people. I think maybe about 24 would have still been like, yeah, me. And then he looked at me and he's like, okay, well, you'll know that in like 10, 15 years. And a lot of people didn't understand it, but I knew exactly what he was talking about, because his mentality was, if you can truly say you would walk away with that $1,000,000, that means you have now completely assessed how difficult this can be and have accepted the challenge to do so. The ironic thing about this is I ran into this exact same speaker 14 years later. At this point, I was like out of high school. I was working, but like I was building towards something bigger. And I ran into him, and I remembered him instantly. I don't think he remembered me because like I was a kid. Like I didn't have a beard. I didn't have any of that. But I was like, you told me something when I was in the 8th grade, and it stuck with me to this day. And he's like, what was that? And I told him about this pebble thing. And he was like, so how did it work for you? And I said, it worked pretty damn well, because this is where I was able to get to. This is where I want to go. And he looked at me and he's like, you are just having this conversation with you. I know that your mind is in the right place. We as people have to understand that there's a lot of things that come into play for us. And because we don't really take the time to have that grace with ourselves and look at what that means in a positive way and like in the actual proper way, we almost short ourselves in life. Having grace for yourself is not just sitting there being like, oh, well, it's okay. You know, you couldn't pull this off. It's okay to feel like this. It's okay to feel like that. What it really means is having just that blunt understanding of who you are and not feeling any type of ways about it. Give yourself this scenario. And I've given this to quite a few people, and it's funny the results that you're going to get. If you're on an island, and there's one coconut left on that island, and it's you and another person, it's somebody that you know, let's say your brother, let's say your partner, let's say your best friend, what are you going to do with that coconut? Most people are going to say, oh, I'd split it in half and we'd share it. Okay, great. That's awesome. But what if that is the only coconut you're going to have for the next 2 weeks? So that's going to be the only nutrients that you have for the next 2 weeks. And having half of that coconut puts you in a place where like you may not survive to the next one. Now what do you do? And you still have some people who would be like, oh, no, I'd still split it and blah, blah, blah. So now you are risking yourself not surviving. And now risking the chance that that other person may not survive either. So you could have that whole coconut to yourself and almost 90% guarantee that you'd make it to the next one. And then when you have that coconut, you'd have the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Or risk the fact that you can split this in half and both of you don't survive. Which makes it pretty much for naught, because at that point in time, like, if you're both not going to make it, then what was the point? And still you had people who were like, no, I would still do it. And I'm like, okay, so show to me how you would get to the next point. And a lot of them had no answer. A lot of it was just hypotheticals. And a lot of it was like, oh, well, you know, I even had someone say like the Lord would provide. And like he will, don't get me wrong. But like you're willing to put yourself in that situation. And you have no real answer, no real response, no real way of showing how you're going to get there. And you're cool with it. And here's why I say don't have grace with yourself. Because I now flipped this question and said, you've never met this person in your life. This person is an absolute stranger. You don't know them from Adam. You don't know them from Eve. Would you still split the coconut? And we still had a bunch saying, yeah, of course. Yeah, you know, it wouldn't matter, blah, 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 blah. So then I flipped it as, okay, so you guys split this coconut. And that person comes and takes your half of the coconut as well and guarantee their survival. Now what do you do? Oh, well, I take it back. So you needed to be wronged in order for you to get to your point of your survival. Now, in the transition of this, I said, hey, I'm not telling anybody to go out there and wrong people or do anything like that, but it's just the mentality that you had. Because a lot of us kind of come up with concepts and ideas and things that we want to do, and we don't do them. We don't do them for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons we don't do them. Some of them are fair. Sometimes, time is hard for you. Sometimes finances are hard for you. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that you're going to have to figure out a way to get there. And hoping and praying sometimes is not going to work. If you're not doing the work, you're not going to get there. And this is why I say you got to have grace with yourself. Because if you're in that mentality of like, I have to go out there and get this. I have to go out there and understand that like nothing is going to be handed to me. I have to go out there and understand that I'm going to have to suffer. I'm going to have to work my ass off to get everything that I got. That's truly having grace with yourself. Sitting there and understanding, hey, this is my limitation here. I may need help here. I may have to change my mentality here. I may have to lose a friendship here. There is change that has to happen for me to get to where I need to get. It's truly a form of grace because you are accepting yourself in your truest nature. Don't get me wrong. If anybody who knows me, I'm like the first person that if you say you need help with something, let's figure it out. Let's do it. You know what I mean? I have no problem with that. It's just, how am I going to be helping you? Which is big for me. I go into this other proverb. I think it's an old like Buddhist proverb or something. I'm not sure where it came from, but it's the old adage of give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, but teach a man to fish and you feed him for his life. We come into situations all the time where we're called to help our fellow man or our fellow woman. And we decide how we're going to be helping these people. We're going to decide, what can I give? What can I do for you? And a lot of us, what we do is we'll put ourselves in harm's way to help another person, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's okay for you to sacrifice a bit of yourself to help somebody else. But you really have to be careful with this. Martyrism is only cool if it actually works, if there's actually some benefit at the end of this. How many times have you been in a situation where you've put yourself out for somebody else? You've put yourself out for a friend, family member, you borrowed them money, you've given them time, you've done things. Let's go as simple as you have somebody who, they have problems. It is what it is. They have problems in their life. Maybe they're in a bad relationship. Maybe they're at a bad job. Maybe they have a bad family dynamic. Whatever it is, they're going through stuff. And they'll call you and they'll talk to you and they'll ask for advice. And you'll sit there and you're like, yo, I'm going to listen to your problems. I got you. Hey, listen, man, I think you need to get out. Let's go. You pick them up. You go somewhere. You guys go out. You have some fun. You do something to help their situation. You give your advice. You do all the things that like you can do to help them. If it's borrowing the money, you borrow the money, whatever it is. And then a month later, they come back with the exact same problem. Most of the time, these people don't know that that was a sacrifice for you. Most of the time, they don't understand that, like, hey, like, I really needed that, and I did this to help you under the guise that it would help you and you wouldn't have this problem again. The crazy thing about it, though, and this is what we don't realize, is a lot of the times we know that is not the case. We know that that person will be back. We know it. We just delude ourselves that that's going to be different. Because sometimes we and ourselves, and this is where I say you have to have grace with yourself, we have this mentality that we're here to be a savior for people. And helping people does make you feel good. Most of the time when you're helping somebody, it's not because like, oh, well, if their life is great, it'll be great. Yeah, that's great. But you get a good feeling from helping somebody else. You get a nice, quick, like little instant pop with that. But where you need to have grace in yourself is at some point, you're going to get to the point where you're going to look at this and say, this doesn't really suit me anymore. Helping this person is not doing anything for them or for myself. and I'm constantly putting myself out. I'm constantly putting myself in bad situations. I'm constantly giving things that I don't have to give and making my personal life and my progression and my growth obsolete to their needs. And where you have to have grace with yourself in that is understanding that you might not be doing this for just the general idea of helping people. You get something out of this. You get that good feeling out of this. A lot of the times, the people that do that and the people that will really put themselves out for other people are people who wish they had somebody like that in their life, which makes this whole thing now a trauma response. You didn't have that in times where you needed it. So you will be that for other people, whether it's good or whether it's bad. The other way that this can go is maybe at some point you were in a tough spot. Maybe we all are. It's normal. Maybe you were in a tough spot at one point in your life, and that person was there for you. Somebody helped you out. Maybe you needed a meal that day, and they provided that for you. And now you cling to this notion that this is who that person is. If I need help, if I need them, this person has gotten me. And you're looking at this now 5, 6, 7 years down the line, and the shit don't really add up the same way. I've had relationships like this. I'm speaking from experience. I've had people who I helped out throughout their lives, and it was just a revolving door of the same problems. And I've also had friends who when I needed something, they were there for me. When I needed help moving, they showed up. When I was hungry, they bought me something. Now we're looking at life 5, 6, 7 years later, and everything that I've now done for them far outweighs what they did for me back then. There are some people that are going to come into your life and they're going to be consumers. Some people are just right off the bat takers, and some people are I'll give a little bit to get a lot back. And it's okay because that's who they are. We have to have grace with them in that fact because they have that mentality for a reason. Maybe they went through something themselves. Where we have to have grace in ourselves is that us putting ourselves in a situation where we may have to get rid of those people or compartmentalize those people in a different role in our lives is positive for us. It does not make you a bad person. It makes you a person who actually cares about your own life. Not helping somebody and not saving somebody every time they need something doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a negative person. It means you're a person who actually cares about their life. You're a person who actually cares about the things that happen to them. I've seen so many people put themselves out and put themselves in negative spaces, negative situations. Sometimes they don't even have money themselves, but they'll give it to help you because you needed it at that point in time. And then 2 weeks later, it's the same thing. And then 2 weeks later, it's the same thing. There are some people that constantly will just contact you just to fill the void for themselves. How many of us have friends who will call you when it's convenient? They'll call you the same time every day. They'll call you on their lunch break. Why? Because they don't want to use their time outside of that for you. The only time they'll call you outside of that is when they need something. So if you have people like that in your life, you got to understand that that's just who they are. And you have to understand that them having that type of dynamic with you is your fault as well. We need to understand that we have to look at blaming ourselves just as much, if not more, than blaming other people. Life is always going to come at you. You just decide how you're going to navigate it. So if you have situations like this and you have people in your life like this, you created this. This one idea kind of changed a lot of the things that I did with my life. I was told, look internal first before you put blame externally. Take that in. Look internal first before you put blame externally. Any situation you come into your life, how could I have avoided this? How could I have navigated this better? What hand did I have to play in order for this to turn out the way it turned out? Because I guarantee you, you had way more power in that situation than you thought you did. It was an action you did or an action that you did not do. If you're in relationships with people, friendships with people, where boundaries are a problem, it's because you're not setting those boundaries. If you're in situations where you're being used like people, you're allowing yourself to be used. If it happens the first time, sure. If it happens the second time, that's on you. But you don't want to change anything because you're now going to be conflicted with your own identity of, am I a good person or not? Am I being a fair person or not? You're not having that grace with yourself to understand that, hey, listen, like, I'm looking out for me and there's nothing wrong with that. There are a lot of us out there who do a lot of things for people. There are a lot of us out there who are struggling on an everyday basis and nobody knows. No one knows. The people around you don't know. They may know that you're off. They may not know why. And a lot of the times we don't tell them why. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason we don't tell people. There's a reason that we don't say, hey, listen, I'm struggling right now. Because either A, we know they're not going to be able to help us. Or B, we put ourselves here. And the last thing we want somebody to do is come and help us. But we're not honest with ourselves for that. We'll come up with like whatever reason it is to blame. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for the things around you. You're responsible for the people around you. And that's because we don't love ourselves. Let me bring you guys here and let me hit you guys with a bit of an honest story myself. I've noticed with me that for the longest while I've kind of been that person who will do that. I'll be that person who like, hey man, I'll put myself out for anybody. I'll put myself out. If I care about you, I got you. If you need to ride somewhere, I got you. If you can't afford something, I got it. If you need this, I got it. And I constantly did that. I constantly did that throughout like my life. It's really like now where I'm starting to kind of like say like that don't make any sense. But again, I did that because I wanted that for myself. You know, I'm that person that anybody can come to. I'm that person that will always try to help you, but you don't always have that with people. And a part of it was my own hubris because I thought, well, I'm special. If everyone's coming to me, then there's no way they can do things by themselves. So like going to them makes no sense. That was comfortable for me. That understanding, that mindset, that was comfortable for me because I understood it. It made sense in my head. So that situation that I created was a reflection of that inner child that kind of just needed to be nurtured. And since no one was doing it for me, I would do that for everybody else's inner child. But it didn't make my inner child feel any better. I put it in the context of this. Let's say you had a sibling. And at the end of the day, your parents gave all that attention to your sibling. You giving attention to your sibling does not make you feel any better. It does not make your parents love you more. It does not bring more attention your way or more love your way. You're chasing that quick little inner pop of like, I feel good, happy endorphin, I got to help somebody. Because the rest of your existence, you really can't figure out, or you're not taking the time to figure out. So it's your way of kind of like a quick little compensation to make yourself feel good. And this is where I come back to your body's lazy and your mind is lazy. Instead of tackling the big stuff, let's tackle the easy stuff, feel good for the little moment, and then deal with everything later on. And then it never gets dealt with because you fall into that cycle. This is how drug addiction becomes a thing. Because you turn to it for the wrong reasons. People turn to it for that escape, and you'll get that escape. But once you have it, you'll constantly crave that escape. And when you hit a problem that you can't escape, that's where you fall apart. We have to understand that uncomfortable is positive. Uncomfortable is the best thing that can happen to you. It's uncomfortable for a reason. It's uncomfortable because it's hard. It's foreign. Jordan Peterson said something very, very interesting. Let me see if I can actually find it. I wrote it down. And he was saying that In a nutshell, you have to go through different stress to unlock different parts of you. And it resonated with me when I became a parent. Like, I raised my younger siblings. I was like the head honcho for them. Like, if you ask them, all of them kind of gravitate towards me because I was the one who was like caring for them. But it wasn't until I had my own kid where it was like, wow, no, this is different. That completely just opened up a whole new mentality. And that's because the stress of that was different. Before it was, yeah, you can care for them, but at the end of the day, they're not your kid. Now this person is completely yours. They look like you, they move like you, they act like you. Everything that they become will be because of you and whatever influence you put on them from the beginning. So I had to be very cautious with everything I did around him. I wouldn't even swear on my kid for the longest while. It's the same like if you put yourself just in a new environment or a new situation. So we now have to look at that and say, well, if putting ourselves in new situations, new environments, and new situations is going to unlock different versions of ourselves, so it's adding tools to the toolkit, then why aren't we doing this? Why is this so difficult? It's difficult because change is freaking hard. And it's not hard because we don't know what to do. It's hard because we don't want to do what we have to do. Now, hear me out on this one. Think about where you're at right now. Think about the beliefs that you have, the values that you hold dear, the people that you have in your circle, the job that you have, the mentality that you have with how you handle all the stresses and negativities of life, the decisions that you've made. Think about all of that stuff. It's made you kind of who you are right now because we are just a byproduct of all of these things together. So now think about changing an aspect of that. Let me give everybody this one because this one actually has been pretty spot on with the thought process of it. Think about you growing up in a family where you had both parents. You had your mom, you had your dad. And your parents loved each other. All you saw was your parents loving each other. All you saw was like this happy relationship. You looked up to both parents. Let's say you looked up to your dad a lot because you thought your dad was like the definition of a great man. And then you find out your father cheated on your mother. Think about the initial shift that will happen. Because here's this person that you idolize and this person that you put on a pedestal, this person whose values you were raised on. And now they've shown you that negative side of themselves that pretty much goes against everything that you were taught, everything that you witnessed. That's going to immediately change your mentality. Now, one of two things can happen here. You can allow it to change your mentality and process it and understand it in a way that is progressive to your life, in a way that you can dissect and digest. Or you can kind of just move like it didn't happen and never address it again, which is what a lot of us do. But just that initial thought process, like, oh, wow, this person's different. Here's another example, a little less intense. You meet a new friend. You and this person get along. A lot of the things that you like, this person likes. You like going on hikes, they like going on hikes. You think similarly. You like similar food. You like to go to similar places. They're very big on let's be spontaneous and go here. And you develop a really, really amazing friendship with this person. And then your best friend, who you've known before this person, does not like this person. They're like, something about them I don't like. I don't like their personality. I don't like their energy. I don't like that they like this. I don't like that they like that. Immediately, one of two things is going to happen. Well, first off, guarantee is going to happen. You're going to be confused. You're going to be like, well, if you're cool with me and me and you have a good relationship and me and this person get along so well and we're very similar, then why don't you like that person? So now you get into this paradox of like, do you even like me? Have you actually been friends with me? Are you just mad because me and this person now get along? Now you'll start looking at other friend like they're a problem. that shift is actually something we deal with on an everyday basis, and we choose not to deal with it. Now, in this situation, you got to understand that you feeling like this is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. It's you figuring out the world and the information that's coming to you. We have to have grace in the way that we process this stuff. We have to have grace in the fact that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to have negative thoughts from time to time. We're going to think in a way that maybe we didn't like thinking. But it happens. Because it's how we understand this. We're going to understand the good and the bad in every situation before we determine an outcome. This is the way it's going to work. And at the end of the day, if you and this new friend have this amazing friendship and that other friend that you had before doesn't want to be a part of it, there's nothing you can do about it. You got to let them go. We are going to lose people all the time. We're going to lose a lot of things all the time. Nothing gold stays in this world. Everything has a shelf life. Everything. So you got to think about why some of the things are around you, that are still around you, and if they're serving your purpose in your life. Some of us have friendships that we've held on to just out of nostalgia. Some of them still serve us, obviously, but like some of them, it's just nostalgia. I've had you in my life for so long, I can't imagine not having you. But you haven't really done anything for me. You're not really adding to me in any way, shape, or form. Some of them hold you back. So there's a couple ways that we really have to start changing our thought process on this. And it's only when we start doing that and truly just accepting who we are as people and accepting the change that may happen with us, that we'll truly start getting to places where we actually want to be in life and an understanding and a peace in life that we need. First and foremost, you got to figure out who the hell you are as a person. First and foremost. It doesn't need to be as in-depth. It doesn't need to be like this huge, like, let's search into the crate and dig in Mariana's Trench to figure this out. It's just who you are right now. What do you value right now? Where are you right now? Financially, where are you right now? Relationship-wise, where are you right now? Friendship-wise, where are you right now? Think about all that you have. Like, what skills do I have? What resources do I have? Like, who am I as a person? What do I really value? Am I a person that values money? Am I a person that values attention? Am I a person that is starved of love? Like, who am I as a person? Then you think about who you want to be. Where do you want to go? Who do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? When you pass and your life is over and you're looking at that tape, and I always try to imagine this, you're looking at this tape, you're right there about to go through the gates, and you're looking at this tape on your life for that point in time to where you made that decision to now. What are you going to see that will make you happy? For some people, it's, oh, I was married and I had a great relationship and we have awesome kids. Some people, it's going to be, I was extremely wealthy and got to give back to my community. Some people, it's going to be, oh, I had like a great group of people around me. I have these great memories. Who do you want to be? What do you want that real to look like? And once you've determined that, you know where you're starting from. You know where you got to get to. And you got to figuring out what's going to happen in that time frame. Well, I'll tell you two things that are going to happen. One, you're going to change as a person. The person you're going to be at the end is not the person you're going to be starting with, because if that was the case, you would have already been there. You'd already be there because you had everything you needed. So the only thing stopping you is something in that journey has to change. There has to be an evolution there for you to get to this point, else you'd have already been there. So one, you're going to change. And two, you're going to lose things on the way. But by extension, you're going to gain things on the way. Everything is sacrifice. Everything is sacrifice. There are a lot of people that I honestly wish that I still had in my life. I had fond memories of them. We had great relationships. There was nothing ever really wrong with them. It just, as I started to progress as a person and as I started to truly find who I wanted to be, they have to make the decision as to whether they're also going to do the same. And some do, some don't. The ones that do, you can't guarantee that they're going in the same direction as you. So I had to look at that and say, well, at the end of the day, like, this is not anything that I really have any control of. I can't control who comes and I can't control who goes. I can't control who stays. I can try to. I can sit there and try to be like, no, I'm going to do everything I can to keep them here and blah, blah, blah. But for what? Because either I have to make myself vibrate at a lower level in order to keep them, or I'm forcing them to be somebody maybe they don't want to be. I have a lot of friends. I'm still friends with them now. They're just, they're not where I need to be in order for me to get where I want to go. And that's okay with them. I have grace to understand with them that they're content where they're at. They're where they're at for a reason. Either they're not doing what they need to do to get there, or maybe they're not ready, or maybe they don't want it. Regardless, that's their decision. It's their decision to be there. Can I keep them? Maybe. But to what degree? You become an extension and a version of the people that you keep closest to you. This is actually fact, because influence is huge. Human beings are social animals. So at the end of the day, the people you surround yourself with the most and the people you spend your time with the most, their interests will become your interest. Their wants will be your wants. Their desires will be your desires. It's going to happen. Rich people hang out with rich people. It is what it is, because they have similar things in common. They may not like each other, but they're in the same realm together. They have the same understanding together. Now think about this scenario real quick. How many times have you met somebody when you were at a low point? And the only reason you gravitated towards that person was because they were at a low point. Or how many times have you been that person who's like, I want to help this person. I see somebody going through something. Let me be the person that helps you out of this. And you do. You sacrifice your time, your effort, everything to pull that person out of that place. And you did it. You did a great job. They're better than when you found them. But then you're not important to their life anymore. And over time, you stop talking to them less and less. They start being less available. And then soon you guys don't talk at all and they're gone. How many times does that happen? That's because who you were at the time was who they needed. Not so much who you needed, but maybe to a degree you needed them too, because you needed to feel good about helping somebody. But at the time, there was a need for each other there. Your interests aligned at that point. And now they don't. And now that they don't, this doesn't exist anymore. This happens for a reason. At the end of the day, human beings, just in general, we have this mentality about us where we need to understand that everything that we do because we want something in return. And this doesn't make you a selfish person. This doesn't make you a jerk. This is not a negative ideal in any way, shape, or form. We do it because we want something in return. When you have kids, you want to be able to invest your ideals into a person. You want to be able to take care of somebody. A lot of people have babies because they're cute. Like, really, like, I'm being honest. Like, I've heard this. But at the most part, you're making that decision sometimes because, like, well, I benefit from this. This is somebody who will provide me love. This is somebody whose love will be unconditional, or at least that's what we perceive. When you get a job, it's like the same thing. Like, I'm coming in here and this place is paying me money, but I'm giving them my time. We do everything because there is something we get back from it. It's just a matter of, like, are we willing to wait for it? Or are we not willing to wait for it? And how will we feel if we get it or not? When you become a parent and your whole thing is like, I want to have this kid, I want to bring this person into the world, I want to guide this person, I want to take care of this human being, something always happens. Every single time. This person who is a baby now becomes a toddler, then becomes a child, then becomes a teenager. And at that point, your interests don't necessarily align anymore. And that's where you get into a lot of like back and forth. You get into a lot of drama with them. You get in a lot of fights with them. And again, it's just part of the growing process, right? At that point, you're looking at this like, well, this thing that I was getting before, I'm not getting anymore. Now that's why it's a problem. Because before, when they're young, they look at you like, oh my God, like you're the greatest person on the planet. And now because they want to do certain things that you won't allow them to do, or don't coincide with the things that you've kind of instilled in them, now you have conflict. And this is normal because this happens all the time. So everything that we do, we have to understand that we do expect something out of this. If you get into a relationship, you could be the most giving person in that relationship. You can constantly be like spending time with them, buying them things, taking them places, wanting to invest your time, your effort, your mind, everything into this person. But don't kid yourself. You expect something in return. You expect love back. You expect companionship. You expect partnership. You expect something. You're not doing it for free. Nobody's doing anything for free. Have grace in yourself and understanding that. Have grace in yourself that you are going to require something back out of this. If we sit there and act like that's not the case, then you're not being honest with yourself. I'll take this one more extension even further. If you could do something that absolutely gave no benefit to your life in any way, shape, or form, and would only potentially cause you ruin more than anything else, would you do it? A lot of people would say yes. I said, all right, cool, not a problem. So if there was a fire and you had to run into that fire to save somebody, knowing that you would die in the fire and not guaranteeing that that person would even be saved, would you do it? And of course, you're going to get a lot of people saying, yeah, of course, yeah, no, of course. So that being the case, if that's the way we're thinking and that's the trend that we're on, why are there so many people that you see every day that you could help that you don't? I'm sure at some point you've walked past that person on the side of the street who's homeless and tried to turn away like you didn't see them, or you could have helped that person at school that you didn't, or helped that person at work that you didn't. Maybe the person is somebody you didn't like, so you said, screw it, I'm not going to help you. We take these things for a reason. We do that for a reason. We do want some type of resolve out of everything. We have to just be honest with ourselves about that. Not only with ourselves, but that other people think the same way. There are people in our life who may just be helping us out and giving us the things that we want because they're getting something out of it. That's normal. It's fine. It's part of life. Now, we also have to take in that we have to also look at ourselves. And you have to really like deep dive for this. This is not something where it's like, I went to therapy twice and I figured this out. This is you doing your homework outside of that. This is you dedicating yourself to your own personal progression. You have to reflect on a lot of things in yourself. You have to reflect, am I a selfish person, or have I had selfish moments? Am I a very critical person of myself and a critical person of other people? Am I a teachable person? Am I an approachable person? Am I a person who can give people all the advice in the world but never take it back when it's myself? Am I a person that prioritizes my comfort over my progress? Am I a person that truly accepts the good and the bad in life? These are all things that we have to answer if we really want to get to that point. And in order to do that, again, you have to be very, very honest with yourself, because at the end of the day, for you to get to where you need to be in your life, this has got to be something that you dedicate yourself to. Now look at something that you want. Let's take a simple goal here. A lot of people, I want to be in better health. Okay, great. Gotcha. What are you going to do? What's better health going to look like for you? Well, I want to eat better. I want to work out all the time. Like I want to work out at least like 3-4 times a week. Okay, cool. Are you doing that right now? Well, no. Well, why? Well, I don't have the time. I have too much going on. It's hard to find the time. It's hard to do this. It's hard to do that. Okay, so is your attention where you actually want to go then? Because if I go back to the analogy of the rock, everybody said, hey, listen, I'll stay on that beach all day and flip over all 10,000 rocks until I find it. Because that $1 million will be amazing for me. So if you're willing to do that, because most people are going to say, yeah, I would do it. Why can you not incorporate an hour out of 24 hours to your personal health? Why can't you incorporate an hour towards the things that you want to do? I've seen this a lot with a lot of people, and just in very different avenues. I know a lot of people who say, yeah, I wish I had more money. Okay. What are you going to do to get more money? When you have those overtime shifts at work, are you taking them? Are you looking into getting a second source of income? Though it may require more work, it may require a second job, it may require like some casual type of work, it may require you to leave your job and go somewhere else. Are you willing to do that? And if you are willing to do that, why have you not been putting your time, effort, and energy into that? We put more time, effort, and energy into excuses to stay where we are because it's easy, because we understand it, because it's comfortable. Don't believe me? Ask yourself this question. When somebody invites you to go somewhere, what's the first thing that you think about? Do I want to go? First thing you're going to think about. Now, if you don't want to go, how many of you will honestly just say, hey, honestly, I don't feel like going. Nah, I don't want to go today. What do most of us do? We create a scenario which makes it seem like we want to go, but we can't. We'll create that idea of, I really would, but like, I have so much to do when I go home. I have to do this, I have to do that. And we give people all this extra information that really doesn't matter. When you can just say, honestly, I don't feel like going. I just don't. I don't feel like going. I don't. I don't have to explain it to you, but I just don't feel like going. How many of us, when we ask for advice, we get advice from somebody and we know it makes sense, but we create like why we can't do that. That's the first thing that we go to. Hey, like I want to make more money. Okay, you ever think of getting a side job? Well, I would, but I don't know if I have the time for that. Okay, well, what are your options then? What do you have room for? What do you have space for? What do you have bandwidth for? What other concepts are you coming up with? Well, I didn't really like figure anything out. Okay, so you got a potential answer. You didn't even look to investigate it. So if I told you, no problem, can you do me a favor then? I want you to go to this location for 5 hours every day for the next 2 months. 5 hours every day for the next 2 months. After that 2 months, I'll give you $10 million. How many of you would show up every freaking day? You would. You would. Most people would. So how are we seeing here that we don't have the time for stuff? We waste a lot of time. We really do. I'm guilty of this too. I'm one of those people who would have always said like, man, I don't really have the time for this. Oh man, like I don't know where I'm going to find the time for this. And then I turn around and I've been on Instagram for an hour. Like legit. This just happened to me like yesterday. And I sat there like, I could have been doing something. And that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's just, it's hard to motivate yourself to do things that you know will solve your problems because it's a lot easier to just have them. A lot of us are just used to that. A lot of us, because of just how society has been, we're used to stress. We're used to having negative things in our life that we can complain about. Some of us bond with other people over that stuff. When you start clearing that stuff up, you start to realize more and more and more that like the things that are problems are things that I could have changed a long time ago. Look at your life right now and think of something that like, hey, listen, like this is a problem, but I can change this tomorrow. Like I can truly find a way to change this tomorrow. How many of you would actually do it? You wouldn't. We get used to that. We're used to having that like negative aspect in our life. Because changing it is hard. Change is not easy. Change is hard. So when you're going through change, this is where having grace in yourself is huge. You have to. Because you're going to go through a whole bunch of things. Like your mind is going to change in ways that you never thought it would. You're going to start looking at people funny. You're going to start looking at situations funny. You're going to be hard on yourself. Have you guys ever come out of a situation that was extremely negative, whether it's a bad relationship, a bad workplace, a bad friendship, and you look back and you're like, wow, I was in that for like 3 years. Oh, I can't believe I stayed there that long. Because now you're on the other side. Now you're in a place where you're in a place of positivity with that experience. So you can look back and say, yeah, it was negative when I was in there. Because now you fixed it. And now you've seen that, hey, if I really wanted to change something, I would go out there and change it. There is a risk versus reward. And your comfort is the biggest thing that you are going to be sacrificing. The more uncomfortable it is, the more beneficial it's going to be for you when it's done. So I always say to people, like, listen, like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Change is not going to be easy for anybody because change is going to be the hardest thing that you're going to do because it challenges everything that you know to this point. And who you come out as is not going to be who you're going in as. You're going to lose people. You're going to lose sleep. You're going to lose a lot of stuff. But if you want it, what's going to come out on the other end, you'll be able to get everything that you were looking for. As long as you're willing to put yourself in that space. We have to have grace that we're going to fail. We're going to have grace that we're not going to make the best decisions sometimes. We're going to have grace that we're going to be criticized. And with that, you got to be careful because you got to be ready to take criticism, but you also have to think about where it's coming from. If I'm trying to be a figure skater and a professional figure skater came to me and said, hey, you're doing that triple axel wrong, I'm going to accept that criticism because he's where I want to be. He's doing something that I'm doing. So his advice is going to linger in me a lot longer than somebody who's never skated in their life. If I'm trying to, if I'm learning to drive, I'm going to take the advice and the criticism from somebody who's driven a car versus somebody who's only been a passenger in a car. So if people aren't aligning to where you want to go, they're going to be the first ones to criticize you to say, hey, listen, you can't do that. Or, oh, I wouldn't do that. Or that's a bad idea. That's why they are where they are. They don't want you to leave there because they know once you leave that, they can't follow you. So they want to hold on to you. And the only way they're going to do that is make it seem like that idea that you are doing is not going to work. You going into that bigger pond is a bad idea for you. Stay here where I am because I'm not going over there. And I don't want you to go over there because I need you here. So be very careful where you get your criticism from when it comes to people. One other thing that we really have to take in, I wrote down a bunch of bullet points here, so it's just putting all this together can be a little much sometimes, is the ideal that I have of a situation. Is it real? Or is it just a safety construct that I put together in my own mind? And I ask myself this a lot, especially when I'm thinking through things or trying to figure things out in my life. Is this a real ideal for me? Or is this just a construct that I put together? And how do I know the difference with the two? For example, let's say you are in, and I gave this example before. Let's say you're at a job a job that has an open door policy, and everything you hear about this new boss is, yeah, he's very approachable. He's a person that you can like talk to if you have a problem or an issue or whatever. His door is always open. And the one time that you need to actually go talk to him, the door's closed. Now, one of two things happens here. Sometimes you look at it and say, well, well, maybe he's just busy that day. Or you might look at it and say, well, I thought he had an open door policy. Why is his door closed? This is kind of nonsense. And you got to understand that right now you're dealing with this enigma of, if this idea something I constructed in my mind, or is this something that's actually like the real situation? And we deal with this a lot. We deal with this with friends. We deal with this with relationships, with every part of our life. We deal with this with our own self. If you're in a situation and you're looking at something that's happening around you or to you, you really have to sit back and break that down and say, hey, listen, the things I believe about this, is that really based on what's going on right now? Or is this just a reflection of something that's happened before that I didn't figure out yet? Am I creating this idea in my mind to stay on the pathway that I've been thinking on the whole time? Or is this really what I'm seeing for the first time? Is this really what I'm seeing right now? If you go on your partner's phone or something, let's just say that's the example, and they texted somebody that maybe you don't know about, like initially it's going to be like, hey, are they actually a person who's cheating on me or carrying on some like relationship that I don't know about? Or is this truly a friendship? Like, how am I taking this in context? And sometimes it's easier for us to just stick to the construct because it makes sense to us. Otherwise, we have to think differently. And that's very, very hard for a lot of people to do. I think what I really want to narrow this down to is just, we have to understand the importance of having grace with ourselves. And this has been the theme throughout this whole talk. Grace comes from true love for self. It comes from truly taking the time to look at yourself with the most honest lens possible. To look at your successes, look at your failures, look at the good and the bad. Look at where your mind is sometimes with these scenarios. And just being completely accepting for it. Knowing that you could have done better at times. Knowing that sometimes you let your emotions get the best of you. Knowing that sometimes you may have let good things go and accepted bad things into your life. Knowing that sometimes something came into your life as an opportunity and you made it a problem because you were not ready to be in a place where your mindset's going to change or your situation is going to change. Knowing that sometimes you put yourself in that situation because at that time, that is truly where you wanted to be. We have to take in that we change all the time. What you're going to value 5 years ago is different from now, and 5 years from now, it'll be different again. Who you were then was a different person. So don't be so hard on yourself for the things that you've gone through. Instead, take it and use that as fuel. We've got to understand that there's people around us right now who may not have our best interests at heart. We got to understand right now that we may be at a job that we don't necessarily like, but we do it because financial stability is important to us. We have to also be ready to understand that, like, hey, we may want to be our business owner and have our own thing, but like, we're not willing to do the work for it. So maybe it's not as important to us as we say it is, because if we're not putting our work into it, then what's the point in complaining about it? There is nothing wrong with the way life has presented itself to you, because life has just been honest. And we can sit here and try to act like that's different. And, this happening to us is our fault, this person's fault or that person's fault. And we can throw blame wherever the hell we want to throw blame. That's on us. But at the end of the day, these are things that we accepted to happen. People don't change overnight. People didn't become bad overnight. Situations didn't get bad overnight 90% of the time. The only time a situation gets bad overnight is if it's like a flash flood or something. But at some point, there's always something that says, hey, listen, this is not going well. And we ignore it. We ignore it because we're okay with the way things are going right now. We truly are. We may say that we're not. And a lot of the times we look back and say, oh, that was stupid. But in that moment, that's okay with us. In that moment, that toxic relationship suited you somehow. Because if it didn't, you would leave. Because eventually you left. You had to be honest with yourself that at the end of the day, I needed to hit the very bottom. I needed to hit that wall so hard that I did not want to hit it again. And I may have hit it numerous times before, but it needed to be that hard or that frequent for me to actually move and say, this is not for me. We need to understand that we're going to make excuses for things and for people. It is what it is. We need to be honest with ourselves that the things that we prioritize aren't going to be what, other people want us to prioritize. And be honest with ourselves in the fact that, like, hey, listen, I may have the time for something, but its importance just didn't suit me at that time. There was other things I'd rather spend my time doing, spend my money on, spend my attention to, other than that thing or that person. We have to accept that we at sometimes can be shitty people. We can. We have it in us. We can be jealous. We can be vengeful. We can be petty. It's part of us. We have that capability. It's just a matter of if we exercise it or not. And the only way we're going to actually know that is if we accept that it's there. Because if we don't know that it's there, we're not going to do anything to try to change it. You are going to have to progress in life. And the only way you're going to progress is knowing that you have faults. So have grace in yourself for that. Grace equals growth. It's needed. They go together. And not only that, to even take it a little bit further, we have to understand that we need to have grace with other people. A lot of them are going through the exact same crisis that we're going through, same processes we're going through. A lot of them aren't having grace with themselves either. So if we're not going to have grace with ourselves, how can we assume that they will? Now, taking that in stride, it is our responsibility to determine how much we're going to expose ourselves to things like this. How much are we willing to take on? How much are we willing to accept? If you know that you're with a person and they're a decent friend, but like at the end of the day, they can be a little like one-sided, or you know what I mean? They're a little opportunistic. How much of that are we going to take on? If you're at a job that you hate and your boss is a complete asshole and he constantly takes things out on you, how much of that are you willing to tolerate until you decide that you're going to deserve better? How much do you think your value is as to whether this is going to be part of your life or this is going to be something that you're going to say, nah, this isn't for me? If you're in a bad relationship, whether it's toxic, verbally, mentally abusive, the person's just a really selfish human being, how much of that are you willing to tolerate? And you really got to sit down and think, well, what am I getting from this that has kept me here for so long? Is this me staying here for me, or is this me staying here because like I just don't feel like I deserve better or I want to do better? And once you start putting that internally first, you're going to start to realize that a lot of the things that you tolerated in your life, with people, with jobs, with just life in general, is based on a void that you were trying to fill for yourself. And a lot of the things that happened to you were really just a byproduct of all of this. And it takes us a while. It does. Everybody comes to this at their own rate. We're all gonna get to a point where we're like, no, I want better for myself. I want more for myself. And what am I willing to go through for that? I'll be honest with you. If you say that this is something that you want, you're gonna put as much effort as you can into getting it. It is what it is. This is how we're wired. You want those red bottoms, you're gonna save up your money to get them if you want them bad enough. So if it's not, and you're not putting that effort in, and you're just kind of sitting around hoping that it falls into your lap, or you're going to put as little effort as possible into it, then maybe you got to think, maybe it's not what I want. And if it's not truly what I want to that degree, then why is that? Be honest with yourself in every aspect of life. And being honest with yourself is what having grace for yourself is truly all about. Now, I hope this was like helpful for some people. I hope that you guys learned something. If you guys love the content, hey man, like hit the subscribe button. Just hit it in the comments. Let me know like what you thought about it. If you agreed with anything, disagreed with anything, it's okay. Like criticism is criticism. It's what it is. It makes us better, right? So on top of that, if you follow me on TikTok, I'm here all the time. I do lives really randomly usually, but these ones I kind of wanted to. Again, I'm filming for the podcast, so come along on the journey with me. Follow me on Instagram. Got a lot of cool stuff over there. I'm all over the place, so I really hope that this was able to help somebody. I really hope that you can apply some of this to your life, and I really want everyone to just be amazing as you possibly can. I hope you guys have a good day. Hopefully I see or hear from you soon. Protect your heart.